Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a review of a horror film from Israel. This is the very first Israeli horror film ever made, so I was really excited to see it. Hebrew language, English subs, released in the year 2010, directed by Aaron Kashales and Nabot Papashadu, and this movie is called Rabies. And the story to Rabies is as follows. Hailed as a fresh vision of fright, this innovative twist on classic slashers begins with two couples stuck in the woods when they accidentally hit panic-stricken Ofer, whose sister has fallen into a deep trap set by a deranged killer. Their rescue attempt explodes into a bloody frenzy when a park ranger and two unpredictable cops get involved, setting the stage for a darkly witty battle to the death. So the movie starts off with Ofer and his sister. They are trapped in the woods. Now his sister has fallen into a trap that has been made by a serial killer who is stalking them through this area. So Ofer is desperate for help and he runs through the woods in order to get it, but he ends up getting hit by a car that's passing by, driven by a group of tennis players who are going to a tournament. So the tennis players want to check if he's alright, and then when Ofer tells them his problem, once he regains consciousness, the tennis players reluctantly help him do what he wants to do. So they get the police, and the police kind of add complications to everything. And pretty soon everything turns into a bloodbath of misunderstandings and also this serial killer who's on the loose as well. So they all become involved in a very complex plot. If you want to know more, please go out there and see this movie for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with a synopsis. Now my thoughts on the film. Two reasons why I really wanted this film. Number one, it's an Israeli horror. As I said, Israel haven't really made horror films in the past. And number two, it was a slasher, but it was a slasher with a very fresh twist. So it was daring to be different. And whether or not that dare worked, I didn't really care, because I appreciate something that is attempting to stand out from the rest of the pack. And that's exactly what this film does. It does stand out. Unfortunately, though, the problems are evident, but there are also likable qualities to the film that actually make it worth viewing. Now, to start off with, Rabies, it's a very misleading title. There is nothing to do with the disease of rabies. It's more about rage. It's more about misunderstanding and complications and being a victim of circumstance, basically. So Rabies is an off-putting title. So if you're expecting something like, people going crazy because of dog bites, then you're going to be very disappointed. So just be very careful of that. But anyway, it is a very different slasher movie. It is shot entirely in the daytime. So there are no cheap tricks, as in making the scene very dark so you don't get to see much. All the carnage you can see in its full glory. So that's something I really appreciated also. It's very easy to make a scary film in the dark rather than in the day. So the fact that they were willing to back their potential and their skill to do this in the daytime was something fresh, and it's something that I really liked. I thought the cinematography to the film was fantastic. And if this is anything to go by, Israel have a very bright future in the horror genre. Now, the visuals, very colourful. It's not a movie that's going to make you feel down. It's a very light-hearted movie, and it bills itself as a horror comedy. But my problem with the comedy aspect to it, it just wasn't that funny. I don't know if it was lost in translation, the humour. There were a few scenes that made me laugh, but if you didn't know that it was supposed to be a horror comedy, you wouldn't have thought comedy was part of it. You would have just thought it was a straight-out horror film. So saying that it's a horror comedy is a bit misleading, because there just wasn't that much humour to it. I actually thought it was more of a serious film than a humorous film. But other people might disagree with that. But for me, I just didn't get that sort of humour in it. The violence was quite hard-hitting when it happens. I actually thought it was a little bit light on for the gore. I thought it was going to be a little bit more brutal than it actually was. But having said that, there are some pretty nasty scenes, especially one scene involving a sledgehammer. You get to see the aftermath rather than the actual graphic nature of it. So it's not your typical violent slasher film, so once again, be very careful going into it, but that's something that makes it different. Now, there are complications to the story. Now, I do like the fact that it was different, but I thought the complications were very weak. Now, there is a movie that is very reminiscent to this film that I'm not going to give away, because I feel that if I give away the other film, it's pretty much going to tell you what this film's like. But the film in question, if you want to know what I'm talking about, I'll PM you. But that movie did it a hell of a lot better, because it felt like that movie had more patience. This movie, they kind of skim over the subplots and the characters, and I thought it was more a case of getting a film done within a certain amount of time, and they're kind of losing time, especially towards the end. I thought the end was a little bit rushed. As I said, the complications, some of the motives behind these characters were a little bit unrealistic. Yes, it is an unrealistic sort of horror film. It's supposed to be lighthearted, but I thought there was some things that these characters did that left me scratching my head, and it really made me think, rather than an unrealistic film, it was a film that the directors were a little bit lazy with. So with a little bit more attention to detail, maybe with a little bit of a bigger budget, I thought the subplots to the film really would have worked. But as a result of skimming over the surface, not really utilizing the material they had, I actually thought it felt a little bit empty to me at the end. I just thought I wanted a little bit more, and it had the capabilities of being an absolute gem. Unfortunately for that case, I don't feel it is a gem. The acting is very good. A lot of people have criticised the acting. I actually thought that was very passable. As I say, I'm not Israeli, so I don't know how natural it's coming over. But they had a lot of fun with it. The characters, surprisingly, I actually felt sorry for one character in particular, the park ranger. I thought he was very likable, and the fact that the directors had no real time to develop any of these characters, it shows that scene that was quite touching, it shows that these directors have the ability to throw in a little bit of character sympathy in a movie that doesn't really require it. So a lot of positives to come into this film, but there are some negatives that hold it back from being a great movie. I'm giving it 3 stars. I still think it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you're a slasher fan and you want something a little bit different. It does stay away from the typical slasher machine, and it does make a shadow of its own. So for that, I can appreciate it. I do feel it's a good movie. I'm going to say at least rent it and give it 1 viewing, because it's certainly worth it. So 3 stars for Rabies. Definitely a very unique film, and hopefully Israel keep making horror films in the future. So that is my review of the Israeli slasher film Rabies. Alright guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this review. Until next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.